I still remember the day it all began, a blindingly bright Saturday morning. The kind of day you'd expect to bring good news. Instead, I found a neatly folded letter taped to my front door. It was from the HOA. In bold print across the top, notice of violation. Apparently, my home, the same one my grandparents built in 1954, was an eyesore and diminishing neighborhood value. They claimed my paint was faded, my garden was unkempt, and the architectural design didn't fit the modern aesthetic the neighborhood had voted to adopt. Behind the polite legal jargon, I could practically hear the voice of Karen Donnelly, our HOA president. She was the type who measured her success by how perfectly her hedges aligned with her neighbors. Her house looked like it was vacuum sealed, in plastic wrap, pristine, soulless, and sterile. I, on the other hand, lived in something with character. My house had peeling turquoise shutters, a weathered porch swing, and the smell of lilacs from the garden that my late grandmother planted. I called the HOA office to dispute the letter. The receptionist sounded nervous when she said, "Mrs. Donnelly requested an in-person meeting." Of course she did. That Tuesday, I faced a panel of 4 HOA members, all wearing identical polite smiles. Karen leaned forward and said, "We've received complaints that your property doesn't meet community standards." Community standards? I repeated. This house has been here since before half of you were born. It is the community. Her smile faltered for half a second before returning to its usual Stepford perfect curve. We're modernizing, dear. We can't hold on to the past forever. I left the meeting shaking, but not with fear, with resolve. They wanted me to repaint, re-landscape, and remodel. What they didn't know was that my house wasn't just old. It was historic. That night, I opened the old cedar chest in my attic and pulled out my grandfather's blueprints, newspaper clippings, and letters. He'd been one of the city's first African-American architects, the first to design a suburban home here after segregation. Laws were lifted. My house wasn't just my home, it was part of history. Karen had no idea who she was picking a fight with. I started my research the very next morning. Dusty archives, city records, and old photographs became my ammunition. Every discovery made me more certain this wasn't just a house. It was a living piece of local heritage. The city planner, a kind woman named Mia, nearly dropped her coffee when she saw my documents. "You mean this is Earl Washington's house?" she asked. "The Earl Washington? The one who designed the Eastwood Library?" I nodded, trying not to sound too proud. "He was my grandfather." She leaned back. "If you can prove the structure is original, you might qualify for historical landmark status." The word landmark echoed in my head. I left the office with a folder full of applications and a fire in my chest. Meanwhile, Karen had stepped up her campaign. She sent me daily reminders to comply with HOA standards. My mailbox filled with thinly veiled threats of fines and forced renovation. One morning, she even stood in my yard with 2 board members, pointing and whispering like vultures circling a meal. "Karen," I called out sweetly, "if you're admiring the architecture, you could just say so." She turned, face tightening. "It's nothing personal, Linda. We just want the neighborhood to look presentable." I smiled. "Funny, that's exactly what the city's going to think once they see how presentable this historic home is." Her frown deepened. "Historic?" "Oh yes," I said, walking up to her. "I've been working with the city to have this house recognized as a landmark. You know, because of its architectural significance." The color drained from her face. "You can't be serious." "Dead serious." 4 weeks. I submitted papers, photos, and personal letters from my grandfather's archives. Mia helped me draft the proposal. I spent nights scanning blueprints, mornings on calls with preservation officers. Each email from the HOA became background noise. Then, one afternoon, a city truck stopped by. Officials took photos, made notes, and shook my hand. "This is an important find," one said. The next HOA meeting was the best one I ever attended. Karen stood there, smug as ever. Until I handed her a copy of the city's official letter. "This house," I said, "is under historical review. Which means your HOA rules no longer apply here." The silence that followed was pure, priceless satisfaction. 3 months later, I got the call. "Mrs. Washington," Mia said. "I'm thrilled to tell you. Your house has been officially designated as a historical landmark." I nearly dropped the phone. The story spread fast, faster than I expected. Local papers ran headlines like "Woman Fights HOA. Preserves Architectural History." Reporters showed up on my porch. Photographers snapped pictures of my turquoise shutters. And people started driving by just to see the famous house. Karen, of course, tried to pretend it wasn't happening. But her poker face cracked when she realized what historical designation meant: no HOA authority, no modifications without city approval. And a skyrocketing property value. Within weeks, real estate agents began calling me with offers, millions. More than my house had ever been worth. One developer wanted to buy it for a museum exhibit. Another proposed turning it into a cultural center. But I wasn't selling. This house wasn't a trophy, it was a legacy. At the next HOA gathering, Karen avoided my eyes. I took my usual seat and waited. The whispers started before the meeting even began. One man leaned over and whispered, "Heard your place is worth 7 figures now." "Closer to 8, I said, smiling. Karen finally spoke. "Linda, the board would like to formally apologize for any misunderstandings." "Misunderstandings?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "You mean the time you called my home trash?" Her lips pressed together. "I may have been overly critical." "Oh, don't worry," I said. "You were just early. Turns out, it's not trash, it's treasure." The room erupted in soft laughter. Even a few board members smiled. After the meeting, Karen approached me outside. Her tone softer than I'd ever heard it. "Linda, I didn't know about your grandfather. About the history." "I know you didn't," I said gently. "That's the problem. Too many people forget what came before them." She nodded, almost ashamed. "Your house really is beautiful." For the first time, I believed she meant it. A year later, the plaque arrived. Bronze, heavy, and gleaming with pride. The Washington Residence, 1954. Designed by Earl Washington. First African-American architect in Eastwood. Designated Historical Landmark, 2024. The neighborhood had changed. People walked by with cameras. Students came for research projects. And local historians called it the Lilac House. After my grandmother's beloved flowers. Even Karen became something of an ally. She helped organize community tours. Smiling stiffly as I shared stories of how my grandparents built this place with their own hands. Sometimes, when the tours end, I sit on the porch swing, the same one Karen once called rotten, and watch the sun dip behind the maples. The house creaks like it's breathing, alive with memory. I think about how close it came to being repainted, remodeled, erased. All because someone couldn't see beyond chipped paint. The Lilac House stands as proof that history isn't always found in museums or monuments. Sometimes, it's right there, hiding under layers of dust and judgment. Waiting for someone stubborn enough to protect it. I even found an old quote from my grandfather. Written on the back of one of his sketches, "Beauty isn't about perfection. It's about endurance." He was right. When I see visitors touch the porch railing or take photos of the lilacs, I know I've done right by him. I've kept his legacy alive, and in doing so, I've built one of my own. As for Karen, she's learned her lesson, or at least, she's pretending to. She still waves politely from her pristine porch. Her perfect hedges trimmed just so. But sometimes, when she walks past, she pauses to smell the lilacs. The irony isn't lost on me. Not long ago, my house was trash. Now it's worth millions, not just in dollars, but in meaning. The plaques, the articles, the admiration, none of it matters as much as knowing I fought for something real. When people ask me how I did it, I just smile and say, never let anyone tell you your history doesn't matter, especially not an HOA. And every spring, when the lilacs bloom, the air fills with their scent, gentle, defiant, and eternal. Just like the house that refused to be forgotten.